as any. Hello, everyone. I am Michelle Hausman, the Artistic Director of Miami New Drama. For those of you who don't know much about us, we are a nonprofit theater company located at the heart of Miami Beach, South Beach, on the historic Colony Theater on Lincoln Road. And we are a theater company that does work mainly as diverse, dynamic, and multicultural as our community, which is one of the most diverse communities in America. And we also mainly do new work. And new work requires a relationship with artists who we feel are alike and who resonate with us. So we're now doing, as the Colony Theater, as well as every other theater in America, is in hiatus for an indefinite period of time. We don't know what it is. Miami New Drama, we have not really wanted to do a lot of online readings of plays, etc., because I guess I don't know, there's something beautiful about the art of theater, which is gathering together in the same space, breathing the same air. But until we get to do that again, we wanted to start a masterclass series, always free to the public, in which we go deep into disciplines. And we've done playwriting and directing and acting in the past few days. We've done 4 sessions. This is our 5th session. And I'm particularly excited about this one. As we said, we do new work, and part of what new work does is relationship with playwrights that resonate with you. And I am really happy to call Carmen Pelaez my friend, my collaborator. Carmen is smart as people come and stubborn as people come. In the best possible way, Carmen is a purist of the art form of storytelling. She holds those values so true and close to her heart that you're always at all with her. I fight with Carmen, friendly fight. My entire day, my entire conversation with Carmen are mainly about skirmishes, about ideas. And I always leave those conversations at awe about how she defends those values, even if it costs her, opportunities or friendships. She'll never betray herself. And that is so rare in people. And those rare, different people are the ones that end up being playwrights, are the ones that we trust in telling the stories of today. Carmen did an extremely successful show that played off-Broadway, played in Miami about 15 years ago, called Rum Coke. I was going to say Cuba Libre. It's Rum Coke. And remember, it's a one-woman show that she wrote and starred in it, which was a hit at the Fringe Festival, then ran off-Broadway, then ran in Miami for months. That sort of like set her name nationally in the theater world. And with Miami New Drama, we collaborated in the world premiere of her show Fake, that premiered the Colony Theater last January. And we are now in the process of a second collaboration, a new world premiere play that is going to happen at some point in the future, as soon as clarity happens, but we've been working on it. So without further ado, Madame Carmen Peláez.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for having me be part of this amazing programming that you're doing. I've already learned so much from different aspects. It's been great to hear from playwrights that are so experienced and that come from different experiences. I think I'm probably going to offer a very different experience too, because my entire trajectory is very DIY. It's pretty self-made for all the good and bad that implies. And I agree with you that I love fighting with you because I feel like I always come out better on the other end as well. There's nothing like having to defend a position to make you either double down on it or scrap it. But if you can't defend it.
And you're okay scrapping it. I've seen you scrap. You are somebody who can change your mind when you're presented with facts. And that is something so rare today that I also always value that when you sort of like, people always grab to their own corners, and you're always able to really intellectualize and take it through the heart as well. But before we go on, Carmen, I would like just for us to just explain to them what the format of today would be like, and more or less what the structure is, so that people more or less have an understanding of what's ahead.
Okay, so guys, I'm going to tell you a little bit of how I got started and what inspired me on this road. And then as I'm telling you what my different inspirations were and how I created different work, I will be giving you 5-minute exercises for you to kind of loosen up, have some fun, do some writing. We're not going to have to share anything. This is completely for you. If at the end people really want to share, we can do that too. But I want you to be selfish about this. I want to give you the space to be absolutely ridiculous and terrible. Be absolutely terrible. So it's really about kind of showing you, modeling what I do and showing you how I accomplished my form, and seeing if that works as a handle or as an inspiration for what you want to create or what you want to explore.
Sounds like a plan. So Carmen, tell us about your trajectory a little bit.
Okay, so I auditioned for my first drama class when I was a junior in high school, and I'd never taken drama before. I didn't know that you had to audition with a pre-published monologue. So I wrote my own monologues, ironically enough. I decided I wanted to be an actor because I saw Whoopi Goldberg's On Broadway on HBO. And I thought, here's a woman that is not what people consider beautiful. She's not the typical starlet, and yet she has this work that is so profoundly moving, and it literally left me breathless. And I knew that I wanted to do that. So I got into the drama class, went to Miami-Dade, where I actually got a very good acting education. And I decided after 2 years, I went to UCF for 6 months, did not like it. Decided I wanted to go to New York. I had been to New York, met a couple of drag queens, and I was like, this is my city. So moved to New York. I auditioned for Juilliard, which I didn't get into, and American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which I did get into. And that was a wonderful education because it was conservatory. I was able to learn all the different acting methods, right? From Stanislavski to Hagen to Meisner, every acting method. I graduated from there. And when I graduated, I'm feeling very good about myself because I can do Tennessee Williams, and I can do Chekhov, and I can do Shakespeare, and I'm auditioning for, Mister, what happened to my brother? I don't know. Oh, the police again, over and over and over again. I got
you're typecasted.
Totally typecast, but also being a white Hispanic, I would walk into an audition because they would see that my name was Carmen, and they would say, well, you're not Hispanic. Back then it was Hispanic. You're not Hispanic, you're not Latina. So they wouldn't consider me at all, even though I'm like, it doesn't get more Cuban than me. Didn't matter. I didn't look the part the way that they saw it. Then a friend of mine said, oh, this little theater's doing a cabaret type night. You've always said you wanted to write a one-woman show. Why don't you write a monologue for it? And I said, yeah, sure. It was a month after I'd gotten out of school. I had done a monologue in school. It was one of the movement assignments with the Laban method, which was glide, flitter. It was a series of 8 different movements. And that's when I wrote Juana, who was the base of my show, Rum Coke. It was a huge hit in school, but I didn't think twice about it. I said, oh yeah, I've got that monologue I did in school. Yeah, I'll do it. I get there. It's a very hip New York City 50-seat theater on like a forgotten type street. The act before me was this hilarious political group with like a ukulele, political farce, ha ha ha. My monologue was about a Sedanos worker that's talking about her spandex being all you need, like her control top, and talking about dyeing her mustache on a night out where she was disappointed. And I remember being backstage thinking, who is going to care about this woman? Like, nobody, in New York, people don't know Cubans. You know, they don't know, they don't know this personality. I basically using my mother's personality because my mother talks very light and people like her. And I just figured Juana was heard, you know? And it killed. Like I was lit before I went out, my heartbeat was like in my throat and I brought the house down and they totally related to her. And I couldn't believe it. And everybody was congratulating me and everything. And I was like, I was still like dumbfounded. And in investigating that moment, I realized the reason people loved her was because they related to the humiliating thing that happens to her in the club. Because we all know what it's like to want and to be humiliated. We all know what it's like to be embarrassed. We all know what it's like to feel beautiful and have a cold bucket of water thrown on us. So I decided to go to the Museum of Television and Radio at the time and investigate every interview that Whoopi Goldberg had done about her show and her process. And the one thing that, there's two things that really came out of that research that I've held through my career right now. Whoopi Goldberg said in creating her monologues, she would take the things that most mattered to her and she would put them into characters that could say them the most dangerously. To characters that could get away with saying them the most truthfully, where people couldn't reject the truth of it. That to me translated to put it in the character that their experience is undeniable, that their character is undeniable. So it doesn't become a philosophical argument, it becomes this happened to this person, this is how this person formed. You get to take a look at it. You get to pet a tiger at a petting zoo. Oh, don't mean the Tiger King reference at all. I'm not into that show. But you know what I mean. Yeah, I know Michelle's very into that show. I'm just like, to me, it's real life is so much more Tiger King that I'm like, it's not as interesting. But I started developing monologue after monologue. And I was doing my 9-to-5 temping gig, and I would write these monologues. Now, what mattered to me? Separation, being Cuban. I know a lot about separation and being separated from family members. Separation mattered to me. My father died when I was 13 very suddenly. Death and the transition of that mattered to me. I got the things, I made a list of things that mattered to me. And then what I did was I thought about things that interested me. For example, one of Juana's lines was, you know, when you look good, you feel good. That came to me because I was sitting outside of Dojo's, this restaurant in New York, and a homeless woman came by and asked us for food. And we hadn't gotten our food, and we're like, I'm sorry, we haven't even gotten food yet. We don't have cash, we only have a credit card, otherwise. And it's like, don't worry, baby, when you look good, you feel good. So I immediately like stuck that line in my head bank, and it was her attitude because she did look good. You know, she was put together and there was something dignified about her carriage. So I took that line and I put it into this Cuban woman. I bank moments and lines, and that's how I built my monologues. So for example, when I'm dealing with death, I wanted to do a Cuban spiritualist, a santera. I had been to many santeras. Not that many of them were that flamboyant. Most of them were really quiet, but the one that attracted me the most was the one that I went to in New Jersey, who was terrible. Everything she told me was wrong. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe I wasted the transit money on this. But as soon as she opened the door, she goes, I scheduled you on the wrong day. Today's my manicure day. Santeria's Tuesdays, Thursdays. Well, I'll try anyways. We'll see if the saint talks to me. And that's Santeria manicure mix-up is something that I get quoted back to all the time, but that's something that came out of my real life. I also absolutely loved Celia Cruz's personality, her openness, her largesse, her generosity, her open heart. So I wanted to give her Celia's personality. But the thing about Celia was that she had a lot of gravitas. And that gave me the pivot to take it from this really ridiculous Santera moment show to a very serious, genuine moment talking about death. So I built monologue by monologue in these things. That's a way that I like to build character. I bank details, personalities that I see that I like. If I like a walk, I'll kind of bank the walk and I'll put it into a kind of mental like Rolodex that I can pick out when the situation will allow me to talk about something a little bit more intense. I know that a certain personality aspect will soften the blow without losing the message. So I would encourage you guys for the next week on Zoom calls or when you're watching television or on the news, I would say find 10 things that just catch your eye that are small. 10 things, be it a gesture, the way somebody nods when you know they're not listening. 10 things that indicate who that person is and just bank it. That's for yourself. Then I went to Cuba and I took this trip. I had these set of monologues that didn't have anything to do with one another. I took this trip to Cuba and I was telling my director about my trip. And then this happened. It was the first time going to Cuba and this and that and whatever. And he was like, that needs to be the arc for your solo play. That needs to be the piece that carries all the other monologues hang off of. So the trip became Camilla's search for beauty. I was obsessed with beautiful and what beautiful is and the perceptions of beauty. Being a big girl all of my life, that prejudice always being used against me, it's something that I've always analyzed. When I discovered Rubens, for example, when I went to Spain and I discovered Rubens at the Prado, I was just like, big women can be beautiful. They can be considered beautiful. It was astounding to me, right? That's another thing that influenced me, a painting. So when I started writing in earnest, I didn't take playwriting classes. It was so much more observational. All my observations would come into the story I wanted to tell. But when I was building these monologues, sometimes I would take 2 monologues and combine them because alone, it felt a little like therapy, or a monologue alone felt a little one-noted. So I would take 2 characters that complemented each other and would weave them on top of one another. And the way that I thought of doing that was by going to museums. When you go to a museum, you look at a painting, and that artist has one shot to tell you everything they want to tell you about that thing they want to express. How are they using line? How are they using composition? How are they using texture, color? Here I'm going to ask Jessica to bring up Boogie Woogie by Mondrian. This was one of the first paintings that made me think about that, actually. If you look at that painting, Jess, can you scooch in on it, get closer to it with the little loop up top? When you're standing in front of that painting, everybody says, oh, what? My grandkid could do this, right? Like, oh, little boxes, little colored things, whatever. But when you come in closer, you see the textures of the painting. You see that under the layers of yellow, there are other colors. You see that there's a rhythm to this piece. There's a balance to this piece. If you were to fold it on top of each other, it would not be symmetrical. And yet there's a complete balance to it. And there's a feeling to it. Now, when you listen to Boogie Woogie, to the song, it carries that rhythm. He captures the sensation. He carries that sensation in this piece. And I wanted to be able to do that with a character on stage.
You know, Carmen, this might be sacrilegious, but now that you mentioned Mondrian, I went immediately to my drawer. I love Mondrian, and so much so that I bought socks that are Mondrian themed. And the beauty of it is that, in fact, no 2 of them are alike. That's
brilliant.
So there's 5 of them, and you can decide to wear which one with which. And I thought this was never going to be something I would share with the world, but you forced me to it. You mentioned Mondrian, and so I had to do it. So before we move on, I just want to say a couple things, hearing what you're saying, and try to put things into context as we speak with our attendees today. The first thing that happened to you was an obstacle. You wanted something, and there was an obstacle to it. So your way around that obstacle, it seemed to be to first go through mentors. You found people who inspired you, whether that's Whoopi Goldberg or Celia Cruz, who in fact, both of them are very powerful figures who both of them in their field dominated using their own sense of beauty, right? I mean, Celia, even with the wigs and with the, she's not,
Absolutely.
no, she's not, and I find that interesting. Then you had to find not only your mentors, but what mattered to you and what was important to you, what interested you. And put that together with your personal experiences and just paying attention to the world around you, right? You looked at things that interested you, wrote them down, you stole from things. So those are sort of like the 5 big takes I'm taking away from how you approach the work you do. And I just want to try to recollect.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's absolutely how I approach the work I do, because I don't like the kind of theater, or I don't connect, I should say, because it's, who cares if I like it or not. I don't connect with the kind of theater. It's like, hey, let me tell you a story about this and the ha. Like that's superficie, that layer. I don't like that, right? I like blood and guts on the drawing room floor. And I like that. To me, the most intense moments tend to be the quietest. When they really land, we're never able to just burst into tears usually, right? So we usually have to accept life's indignities or problems or traumas or humiliation with a breath and a grasp. So I basically, everything that I've grasped, I'm like, I put it in an artistic bank so that I can use it later. I mean, I think in a way, as writers, we're all playing God, right? I personally try and answer questions that I've been never able to answer. Why would I lose my father? I adored him. He meant the world to me. He was the other part of my heart. And yet I have to deal with his loss every single day. And how do you get through that? And by me dealing with it, when somebody would lose somebody and they would talk to me about it, I would find myself telling them the same thing. The person's not there, but the language changes. You can still communicate. So I wanted to put that in a way that other people would hear. I take all those moments very to heart, because I think, look, everything's been written. Love, death, cheating, just happiness, joy, everything's been written. So why am I writing? Why do I care to present anything, right? I can do anything, but it's because I need to discuss something in a particular, I think that I can bring something, a new layer, shed a new light on subject, particularly with Cuba. When I got to New York, I was dealing with a lot of people in Miami. You're the majority, right? But being progressive and being a Democrat in New York, in those circles, I was like, Cuba's fine. Oh, Castro's great. It was the first time in my life I'd heard it. So I wanted to present the Cuba that I grew up with and the Cuba that I came to know through going in a way that wasn't a fight between Castro good, USA bad, USA good, Castro bad. But this is life through the Cuban lens, and you can take away from it what you will, right? But life isn't only, that was my starting point, not my ending point, which is why I was able to investigate all of those things. Identity work bores me to tears. I don't watch it. I try because I want to support, but it bores me to tears because they use it as an endpoint.
Right.
I wanted to make sure not to do that. So for example, I have a monologue in there, the last monologue, Nena, who was an ex-Tropicana singer, who's now folding toilet paper in the bathroom. That entire monologue came about because I was very much in love with a jazz pianist, and I would go see all his gigs in New York. And he was in a Cuban band, even though he was American. And he was playing the piano one day. And it sounded like the conga was fighting with the piano. So I came up with this couple that she was the singer and he was the piano player. And of course, story of my life didn't work out because I'm the queen of unrequited love. And once we stopped communicating, you know, and I was like, look, I can't take it anymore. He kindly understood. And even though he wanted to be friends with me, I was like, I need this space. And he just kind of like walked away. And then I came up with the line, watch how somebody comes to you. How they walk away won't tell you anything about them. Or how they come to you, watch how somebody walks away. How they come to you won't tell you anything. It's how they walk away. That will reveal their soul. I didn't know a real Tropicana singer. I didn't know a real Cuban player. But it was this very personal moment that I could have made it a moment about a boy that broke my heart. But I wanted to make it about something more than me. That's another thing that was very integral to the foundation of my writing style. If it's about you, you're done. You're cooked. Let your perspective be the starting point, but it has to be about so much more than you. It has to be about something so much greater than you that's just coming through you. But you're the starting point. If you're the end point, I don't think you're going to get a lot of satisfaction out of it.
So,
and other people won't really be able to relate to it.
So, by the way, we have a Q&A section in this chat, and at some point we're totally going to open it up for even more questions. But we got a question from Dante that sort of relates to what you're saying. It says, you know, any advice you're getting out of the mindset of, you know, nobody cares what you have to say? You know, how do you, I guess, really the question is, how do you tell yourself that what you have to say matters and that people will, you know, that it's worth for you to continue to explore?
I just think, do I need to say it? Do I need to say it?
Right.
Right? Because, you know, do I need to say it? Am I compelled to put this in a place and ask people to get babysitters and spend their money and give me a few hours of their time because I need to share this? Nobody cares what I have to say either. You know, I think when you realize that you're nothing, you also realize you're everything, right? So there's that wonderful point, which is why if you're going to say something, go vertical, you know, go vertical.
What do you mean?
Start from your inspiration and connect it to the greater world.
Right.
You know, you can liken it to Instagram. The Instagrams that have every square a selfie, I can't. But the Instagrams that show the way that that person looks at life, I'm fascinated by.
That's interesting.
And to me, that's writing. Because you have a lot of writing that is very self-reflective and it's right here and it's very precious. I come from the school of anti-precious. I'm harder on myself. I have said worse to myself in my own head than anybody could say to me.
And out loud as well. So
because the fleeting nature of everything, you know, like I'm not the greatest playwright in the world and I'm not the worst one either, you know? So it's like, but there are times where I look at something and I'm like, that's kind of boring. Like, I don't want to spend 6 months or 10 years going over this point.
Right.
But here's something that I think I can shed a new light. If I give this character life, it's going to make somebody else go, huh, that's interesting.
So
and maybe add a different perspective.
In the last conversation, you know, every time I speak with a playwright, there's always, you know, my question, because as a director, I'm always fascinated because, you know, every writer has really their own way into the story. So, you know, some people think of a moment in time and they want to write about that. They think of a character, they think of a plot that they like. You know, there are different ways to get into it. You know, it seems to your experience from Rum Coke is you started with a character. So character came first, the voice came first, and the last thing that came was plot.
Absolutely, which is why I struggle with plot everything from my screenwriting to my playwriting. Now I'm actually getting better at it because I make lists, but plot's my hardest because I'm not as interested in plot as I am as to why people do things. But if you have people truly, if you have characters really telling the story through their actions, the plot becomes stronger and stronger, and vice versa. Like you can create a plot that brings out character actions that are very organic. But a character to me is much more interesting than, I mean, plot's a procedural. Plots, Law and Order SVU. I mean, there's a lot of plays that you go in and you look at and you go, oh, all right, I know exactly where this is going. And you're rarely surprised. Not because you're such a genius, but because they're more concerned in hitting plot points than characters.
But you're right. You're being right. As a director, I love plot. I love. And you look at the great work. Like if you look at the Greeks, if you look at Shakespeare, plot is so intertwined. There's a perfect marriage between characters and plot. And
absolutely.
Your play Fake is an example of a plot-based play. You know, in the way that you were describing.
100%.
You're describing a Rum Coke, and it's character, but this, I mean, Fake, it's a form. I mean, I don't want to say a formula in the bad way, but it's a plot machine.
No,
it slowly, takes you.
Fake is a plot, like for my writing, Fake's a plot masterpiece. To the point, as far as plot's concerned in my own writing, I have never written something so directly on plot down to the pages. You know, like when they say, "Oh, well, you should hit this by this page," that was happening in Fake. I couldn't believe it. It's not that I don't think plot's important. It's that that's not what inspires my story.
Right. No.
But plot is so important because you need, it can't hang, if you only have plot and no characters, you have a skeleton without muscle.
Right.
And if you only have a character and no plot, you've got a big blob of muscle. You need both equally. So I definitely wouldn't mean to diminish plot. Plot is so important. But when you really delve into if you pick your characters carefully and you put people in a room that don't necessarily like being in the room with one another,
right?
That's where you've got magic. You put a bunch of accountants in a room and you have a room full of accountants. You put a politician, an artist, an accountant, and a grocery clerk in a room, now you've got a play. And to me, it's these conflicts, these things that are interesting. Something before we get off Rum Coke that I actually wanted to mention that are very important to my forming were Ruth Draper, a great American monologuist, and Luis Carbonell, a great Cuban monologuist. What I tuned into with both of them was they would investigate society, class issues, race issues, sex issues within their monologues. But not only writing, performance, the way that they affected me was that they would really, you could almost hear what the other person was saying, and they would wait, and they create such worlds in the rooms of their monologues. You would be exactly where they wanted you to be without it feeling expositional. It was storytelling. And that to me is also really important. I mean, I come from a family of storytellers. Cuban, we love telling stories. We're an island at the end of the day, like the Irish, right?
Right. And let me just, as an example, I mean, and also it's interesting that you have sort of like your inner narrative of who you are. If people have identity crisis or whatever, and that is something that you will never have because you are so ingrained to who your idea of self is. So much so that for those of you wondering what the heck is that Zoom background that Carmen has, it's not a Zoom background. Carmen, would you mind just to humor me, would you mind explaining briefly what it is that we're all looking at?
All right, so this is for my great aunt Carmen Pelaez. She's a painter. For her 100th birthday, I did a special symposium with Christie's, and I wanted to recreate her environment. So what I did was I had them blow up different pictures of our family's house in Cuba, and then I asked to keep one of them so that when people walked into the gallery space, they would feel like they were in Amelia's house in Cuba, which was her big inspiration. You can see it in a lot of her paintings. So in my dining room, I have the big cutout, a whole wall of our family's dining room in Cuba. And that's where I would sit at that table, is where when I would go to Cuba, I would sit there and hear stories from Ninita, who's a character in Rum Coke, hear stories about our family and about Cuba from her while having breakfast, lunch, and dinner at that table. And then when I did the symposium with Christie's, I asked them to keep this panel, and it was with me in New York for 20 years, and it's with me now in Miami, and it's in my living room, in my dining room in Miami. Something I should mention also, when I was in school, before I left school, our acting teacher told us, look into your family histories, see what inspires you, bring them in, let's talk about them. And I brought in a catalog of my great aunt's work. And then she asked to speak to me after class. And she's like, how come this is the first time I've ever heard about this? And I was like, well, Jackie, because my aunt's an artist, but I don't want to, like, you know, she had her trajectory and I have mine. And she's like, you're an idiot. I was like, yes, but, and she's like, no, you need to investigate this. This is obviously something that means something to you and you need to delve into it. So when I was formulating Rum Coke and my trip to Cuba, which was very much to discover that world that she painted about, I used each one of her paintings to match up with a character for the trajectory. I start off saying, you know, what makes beautiful beautiful? My pursuit of beauty. What is it? Why is that? Why do I connect with that? And then I come up with my answer at the end. And I think that the biggest gift that Amelia and my family has given me through Amelia were the stories about how she would paint. She basically did it every day of her life, except for one year that my aunt got sick. But somebody would bring home like a bag of oranges, throw them on the table. Amelia would come by and look at the oranges. And 2 weeks later, there'd be a painting that was orange. And her brothers and sisters at the time, Cubism was not the rage. She brought it from Paris, but in Cuba, very few people did it, basically her and Nam. And she would give away her paintings and people didn't want them. And they would make fun of her. They're like, you know how to paint an orange. Why don't you paint an orange? And she would just say, why should I paint an orange? Everybody knows what an orange looks like. I want to paint the way the orange makes me feel. And that was always kind of like one of my tenets. So how does it make me, what's the essence of the story I'm telling? Whoopi Goldberg's, how dangerous is it? How truthful am I being? And the third one, which, and then we'll move on from monologues, was Billy Crystal. In doing this research for Whoopi, I came across this interview with Crystal that said he was at a club, there was a comedian going before him with his manager. He was watching this comedian, the comedian was killing. The room loved him, everybody was like, people were crying, they were like, they were banging on the table. Oh my God, best comedian ever. And then it was Billy's turn. He looked over at his manager, he goes, I can't follow that. And his manager said, And Billy Crystal was like, you didn't think he was, and people are like still rolling on the floor. What are you talking about? He was great. And he goes, he didn't leave a tip on the table. And I was like, well, tip on the table? He goes, yeah. He didn't leave a tip on the table. We served him, but he didn't leave us a tip. Tell me one of his jokes. And Billy Crystal couldn't remember one of the jokes that he had just heard that had made him cry laughing 5 minutes ago. And that's when Billy Crystal realized you always have to leave a tip on the table, a hook, an emotional button, something beneath the laughter that's going to make people connect with the laughter in a more fundamental way. And I always wanted to make sure when I'm doing a monologue, I know I've won. When I hear like, oh, that I know I've won. One of my monologues is a prostitute, a young prostitute. She was inspired because I went to see, for the first time in my adult life, a ballet, Sleeping Beauty. And it was Paloma Herrera doing the Adagio. In this Adagio, the ballerina has to do several turns on point, and she's handed off to different dancers. And it's on point, and it is excruciating. It's one of the hardest things in ballet to do. And I was very fortunate because all the ushers at the Met in New York were Cuban. So we would get cheap tickets. And then when the lights would go down, we'd flood us into the orchestra for all the empty seats. And they'd been there for years and they'd been doing it for years. So we were very close to the stage and I could see Paloma's face. And you had this epitome of grace and beauty. And it was just the slightest, it was a control. It was a mastery of emotional and physical control that I'd never seen that up close. So I made her a teenage prostitute in Cuba. Because I would see these prostitutes in Cuba, these kids going off with these horrible old men from all over Europe. And they would have this control, but then they would just look to the side in a moment and you would see that they were devastated. And both of those things usually live in the same space for me. So that's what I would say as far as monologue writing. I took these things that inspired me and I made sure that I could make my points as dangerously and as truthfully as possible by putting them in characters whose actions were undeniable.
Well, Carmen, it's really truly inspiring to hear you speak, to more or less go into your brain. I wonder if this is a good time to turn this masterclass into something a little bit more practical. Yes,
absolutely. Absolutely. So everybody grab your, whatever you're writing with, I want you to write down the name of somebody you remember, somebody you noticed, somebody that had a tick, a something that you noticed.
What do you mean a tick? Unpack that a little bit more.
Okay, so I noticed that a lot of Cuban women of a certain would always talk with their lip, right? So what did that tick inspire in me, right? Like you have a leg shake. So if I were to write a monologue.
I was actually wondering if you could notice just by seeing me here that my leg was shaking. And I hope but I hope you're using your memory of my leg shaking and not the fact that I'm actually shaking at the moment.
No, we can see you shaking at the moment. Like my tick would be this constantly, right? My tick would be this constantly. I'm always messing with my hair. I'm always like messing with my hair. That's my tick. So think of a thing that stands out for you. Write it down. Don't think too much about it. It could be an old man across the street you saw one time. It could be a baby that keeps sucking on their thumb. It's just a tick.
All right.
Now think of the most embarrassing thing that happened to you ever. The most embarrassing thing that happened to you ever. The rejection of a lover. Having your shirt tucked into the back of your pants when you had to do a show and everybody saw your bare bum. You know, being caught in a lie. Think of that, write it down, and let it be truly embarrassing. You can be silly about it, but let it be something that hurt. Let it be one of those memories that you keep revisiting even 30, 40 years later, or for the children on this feed, 10 years later. Yeah. Let it be something that you don't like sharing with people, that you don't like admitting about yourself. Maybe it's something ugly that you did to somebody else. Now I have these loteria cards, which I wrote solo pieces with. We're gonna, actually, you know what? I'm gonna use my flashcards.
Is that
Mexican loteria cards? Yeah. I wrote a 1-act series by pulling these randomly and then creating characters and based on, inspired by them. Now, I want you to ask yourself what the essence of that thing was. Is it injustice? Is it that you hurt somebody else? What's the essence of that moment? How did that moment feel in your body? Where did you feel it? Did you feel it in your shoulders? Did you put your head down? Did you want the earth to envelop you? And now I'm gonna pick a random card. I'm just gonna like put them on their bottom, you know, face down, and pick one. Okay. So this is La Garza. It's number 19. If you can see this, I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I think we can see it well.
Look at the colors of this card, the flatness. Some of these are in 3D, this one isn't. Write down the attributes of this card. First, what you see and how they make you feel. Like if you hate the color green, you know, write that you hate the color green. If birds make you nervous, write that they make you nervous. So you want to pick up the details of this card. It might not inspire much from you. That's fine. Just for the purposes of this. And then what you're going to do, we're going to take 5 minutes. Yeah, we're going to take 5 minutes of, you're at a confessional.
Aha.
You're
Well,
at
but that implies that, you know, that there is not a religious diversity in this group.
Or a therapy session.
There you go. Okay. All right.
Or an anonymous chat room if you don't believe in therapy.
Okay.
And you have to tell the other person about this experience as though it had happened to somebody else. You're not in the first person of this experience. You have to recreate this experience. You don't have to use the experience. You have to recreate, capture the essence of this experience as though you were telling this story to somebody, like if it happened to somebody else.
Okay. And how does the tick, or the thing?
That would come out in manifesting where it affected you. So how it affected you, what you felt in that moment, would be something that in the stage direction, you would put, you know, she grabs her wrists as she starts to say, or you do want to give your actor something, some handle, physical, to respond to this.
A way in.
A way in, exactly. You want to give your actor a way into it physically.
All right.
If it's something very embarrassing, the actor might be looking away as they're telling this story.
Well, but it's embarrassing, but it happened to somebody else, no?
But it happened to somebody else, but the actor, the character
still can feel embarrassed by it.
Right.
All right. Carmen, do you want to start? Before we start, is there any questions? Is there anyone who, I mean, there's a wonderful question for Liana, a great comment that we're going to return to it as soon as this exercise is over. But regarding this exercise, is there a question about it that is not clear? If not, we're going to start the 5 minutes. And then, you know, whoever wants to share can share, but obviously it's not we don't have to. Let me just, where is my timer here?
Now, if something happened to you that you don't want to share, you've got to find a parallel for it to invoke the same essence of the feeling that you had when it happened, right?
How about La Garza? Right. So how does La Garza play into all of this, Carmen?
La Garza plays into it. So La Garza right here. So when I see that card, I see that she's fishing. She's pulling something out of a lake. I see that she's alone. There's an elegant to her line. So if I were to write a monologue based on the ingredients, let's say, that I just gave, I would probably make it a very elegant woman at a soup kitchen, and she's the only one of her kind there, and she's desperate to help people because she cheated on her adoring husband and she doesn't know what to do. All
right. So before we go in, you gave us a lot of materials to choose from, right? You've said a memory, a tick, the card, etc. So people can choose any or all, right? They can just go.
They're your ingredients. They're your ingredients. What works for the story. What you want to get to is a truth, which is why I say what really gets to you. What's something that happened to you that made you feel something intense? You want to get to a truth that matters to you, not a lesson that you want to give, but a lesson you learned, right? And then the things like the tick, that's just layering. That's just giving it a human place to live in, an actor's body. That gives it a sort of rhythm to what's being said. The reason I used the card was for inspiration. Like, I didn't personally think, I think that card is elegant. If I had pulled out this card, I would have come up with a totally different story.
All right. So,
okay.
So let's start at 5 minutes. Yes.
Yes, let's start the 5 minutes.
5 minutes. You're going to be able to see Carmen's kitchen. Cuban.
Oh, I'm not writing it.
No, I mean that they're in the 5 minutes. They're going to be able to see the beauty of the Peláez home in Cuba.
Yes.
Which is just behind you. So if Carmen, you also want to take a break, they're going to be able to see that, and that'll be that. We'll see you guys in 5 minutes.
5 minutes, guys.
All right, so those are 5 minutes, a little bit of change.
5 minutes.
And it's a reminder that, nobody's expecting perfection, right? We're all expecting just a little bit of bravery. That's all that is required for this.
This is really just like an exercise to kind of like free your hand, right? So when an artist sits every day at their sketchbook, they free their hand, they doodle, they loosen up their wrist. So this is just an exercise to kind of loosen your wrist a little bit, but with a purpose, so that you're still connected to something that matters to you. And how do you couch that? And how do you tell it? If you have to say something, like I've gotten to the point, one of the biggest compliments I got about my writing early on from Rogelio Martinez, actually, who's an excellent playwright, when he read Rum Coke.
He'll be in a couple of weeks joining us for a masterclass.
He's amazing. And one of the best compliments I've ever gotten in my life was from him when he said to me, "You are not afraid of humiliating yourself." Which at first I was like, "What?" But he's right. Like you said, Michelle, for better or worse, I am what I am. Take it or leave it, like it or love it. Believe me, I know it's not anywhere near perfect or likable to everybody. That's fine. But I can't change it because, as long as I don't hurt people, I'm good. So
what are we doing with this exercise?
The point of this exercise is if you
sharing it, Carmen?
I don't know if anybody wants to share. I told them they weren't going to have the pressure to share. So
right, is anybody wants to share? So and if they share it, you want them to paste it, or you want them to come up in the screen and read it out loud?
Up to them. If it's fine with me either way. So
I'm looking at all of you, especially, I'm not gonna call anyone out, worry not. But I know there are performers here. So if anybody wants to share it, you can raise your hand. You can, and there is a way of raising your hand on this that is somewhere in the platform, or you can just write in the chat saying on the bottom below, on the lower right side, there's a chat, and you can write. You can just you can say, "I want to share." Oh, somebody. So Dante Di Giacomo rose his hand. Let's bring in to the panelist so that he can share. Give us a second. All right. So
awesome.
All right. Dante.
I was going to ask if I could paste it into the chat.
Oh, would you rather do that? Yes, yeah. Absolutely. All right. So paste it. Perfect.
Do I paste it in the chat or do it in the Q&A?
Oh, either way, I guess. I think the chat is better.
I can't see the chat. Hold on, let me see.
Yes, you can.
Oh, there I can.
And do I do it to all panelists or all panelists?
No, to all, everybody to all who is on it says something like everyone, all panelists and participants. Okay, thank you. So Carmen, do you want to read that out loud, Carmen?
I was loading groceries for dinner when I saw another person at the store bending over and picking up something they dropped. As they stretched down to grab it, I noticed a pained look on their face when their lower body stiffened. They very slowly brought themselves back up with a confused and embarrassed look as their legs seemed to shuffle back and forth. With a grimace, they carefully put the last grocery into their car. They hobbled back to the store with a deliberate but stilted stride. I really love that. I'm going to tell you why I really connected with that. I totally want to know more about this person. I want to know what happened to their back. I want to know if they're so upset about something that that's why they dropped it. I want to know if they're young or if they're old. I love the description of it. And more than anything, I love the curiosity that the character that's speaking has about this one person. What made this one person stand out, connect to the person that's telling this story? That's what I see when I see there. And there's a question I want an answer to.
Right.
Which is what I love about it.
Right. So it returns to the theme of always leaving more questions than answers, right?
Yes.
And the way that is also the tip on the table that that Billy Crystal was talking about. Speaking of crystals, Crystal Millie Valdez had her hand up. Oh, there she is. All right. So let me bring her up to the panelist. So I'm making a panelist, Crystal. Let me see if she'll appear as a panelist. All right, unmute and okay. So Crystal, are you there? Hi, Crystal.
Hi.
Hi.
Is a wonderful South Florida actress and she also, we're lucky enough to have her at the Coney Theater in Miami New Drama. So I'm a big fan of Crystal. So okay, go ahead, Crystal. The screen is yours.
Okay, I wrote it down. Do I just read it?
Yes.
Yeah, well, lucky enough that we can have a wonderful actress reading what you wrote. So go for it.
How do I screen share what I wrote? You're not gonna be able to. All right. I'll just, I guess, read it.
No, we can see you. We can see you.
Okay. This is a bro. I don't know, bro. She was going to her first club because Javier was gonna be there, and like she was cute. She was always smiling and shit. I don't know why she was going to the club. That wasn't really like her, and I know she cared about him. She was going out and changing the way she was. You know what I mean? Like changing her hair and changing the shit that she would wear. And I was like, what the fuck? You know, like who are you? She was always playing this lame ass instrument in the orchestra room, and well, it was always so strange because I'd be like, why the fuck are you playing a violin? You know what I mean? Like, come smoke a blunt and some shit. Like, she was cute, you know what I mean? So we end up going to the club, and it's this place called La Perrea, and it's in Doral, you know what I mean, bro? And it was this club with these two bouncers, and they had a big beer pong table, and they always let us in as long as we paid a little bit of money, you know what I mean? 20 bucks and you're done. And then Javier was my boy, so we rode out together, and this chick, Alina, was just trying so fucking hard, you know what I mean? It was fucking sad to get his attention, and she was in these fucking stilts that I could remember. They were pink and shitty looking, and she was just like wobbling around, and it was fucking sad, bro. And then we're all dancing and shit, drinking leftover drinks because we didn't have any money for anything else. And I see Javier grinding on her friend Jenny, and I'm like, what the fuck, bro? That's my girl. And I push him to the side, and he's like, get off my dick, bro. So I tell him I don't want to get with anybody else, and he says, well, I'm gonna get with her so you can get with Alina or some shit. And I tell him I'm not hooking up with that flat-chested loser. But look, I didn't know she was right behind me, you know what I mean? And there was no way I could have known that. And she just started crying and shit, and she tried to run out, But she's like wobbling around on these fucking heels, and she falls in the middle of the street, and she's trying to get out, and I don't know, I didn't see the car coming or any shit, but it was rough. It was rough, bro. I couldn't have seen that shit coming. That's it.
I love that.
Crystal, that was wonderful. What a story, beginning, middle, and end. Surprises. Carmen, what do
Yes.
you think?
I loved it. I think there's so much that you did right in that. From the minute you mentioned the $20 that it took to get in, I knew that this is a group that was worried about money. So when you followed up and you pad it with the drinks that they're taking, leftover drinks, the language use. It's funny because in my new play, I have a couple of bros, but they're Coral Gables bros. But the language use really set them in a place and time, which I loved, and it was consistent throughout. To me, I also love the details that he picked up as a character, right? The details that he zoomed in on, and that he was like, these pink, I thought it was fantastic. I was there, I was present, and when you see the girl, I didn't realize she was right behind me. Funnily enough, Juana has a situation where a guy's making fun of her, a bro is making fun of her in a club, and apparently it happens a lot. But you felt it. I was like, oh my God, she heard. Like, it was just, I got a very clear sense of what this world was and who these people were.
And then a car coming.
Yeah, the car.
I mean,
and 5 minutes ago, that didn't exist. These people didn't exist, right?
That's right. That's a great example of the power of sitting down and write for 5 minutes when you and it's painful to do it, but how great when it comes together. So we have Marcela Javes. Thank you, Crystal, once again. I'm going to return.
That was awesome. Dante Crystal so far 2 for 2. That's awesome.
Right. So we have Marcela Javes. Let me bring Marcela to panelists. Marcela is not only the daughter of our education director, Viana Rodriguez, but she's also a Miami New Drama actor. She
gave a wonderful performance.
She did an extraordinary performance on Bridge of St. Louis Rey.
Which I enjoyed very much. Yes, she was wonderful.
Outstanding. All right. So, Marcela, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Do you want to share video, or do you rather do it like this?
How do I? Okay, here. Let me. Yes. Hi.
All right. There is.
Nice background.
With a Mexican.
Yes, because I'm in Mexico.
Very nice. All right.
So I write a small thing, actually. It's not so big, but they were scared. They didn't know what the fire was going to do to the neighborhood. They ran away and looked back only when they were far away. The smoke was big. They are 12. One of them kept thinking what her mother would say of her having a lighter. She knows she's not that innocent girl her family thinks she is. But the truth is she really was. Now she knows. They called a neighbor and told a bare-faced lie. She saw the scene and started laughing. That's it.
That was great. Thank you so much.
That's great. Compact, but to the point. Really, the detail that really stood out for me is that they didn't look back until they were very far away.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What a beautiful thing. They didn't look back until they were very far away. And also, she has a secret. She's not so innocent, but she is, but she's not.
Right.
So there's a complexity there that as a young child, she's acknowledging there's a world that sees me, but then there's really me, and that's different. So you're setting up something.
Absolutely. I'm so happy, Marcela wrote, and she's, we're a big fan of her, and so it's someone to keep an eye on in the future also.
Loved it.
Outstanding. So Juan Arturo, let's bring Juan, and then we'll bring Shannon up. All right. Juan, we're trying to promote to panelists. Juan, you have to accept. Okay, there you go.
Oh, it's that Juan Arturo. I know that kid.
All right.
Man, since he was a kid.
Unmute. Let me unmute you. Okay. And Okay, Juan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Hi, sweetheart.
How are
Can we
you?
start video. Would you rather we not start video? Or you can.
I can start video. Let's do it.
Okay, great.
All right, sock it to us.
Okay. Before I start, a question. Should I read this as if I was the character, or do you want me to read this like with whatever stage directions I wrote into it and whatnot?
No, give me the character. Give me the character, because the stage directions, that'll be for the actor that you give it off to. But give me the character. Juan's also a beautiful actor. I've known him since he was a kid. His mother's a brilliant writer. So just give it to us in your art form, babe.
Wonderful. I think it was maybe 3rd or 4th grade. There was this goofy kid in our class. He tries to be the class clown, but he's not funny. He's kind of chubby. So he walks up to the prettiest girl in our class. I mean, by elementary school standards, you know, I'm not a perv. He walks up to her, brimming with confidence. I mean, this guy thinks he's the cock of the walk, and she's surrounded by her friends, so there's a real, like, pack mentality to them. He struts up, looks her dead in the eye, and says, "You're really cute. I like you." She gives him the up and down, you know, like a little, like, and just says, "Ew." We were at Coral Gables Elementary, which back then was a completely open school. And if this kid could have run out the door and just kept running home, I probably would have followed him. Shit, I wanted the earth to swallow me up, and I just watched. And
All
see.
right. Thank you
Nice.
very much.
Nice. What I really liked about that was the arena feeling, the kids gathering.
Yeah.
In the arena, and the ew.
Thank you.
That was really funny. I love the way you approached that. I would even take out of the story, he looked her up and down, because the way you acted it was so beautifully, because you just kind of went like this.
Yeah.
The actor's going to do that too if you put it in the stage direction. But I love the way you were like, ew. And what I really love too is how much you sympathized with him.
Mm-hmm.
And you wanted to follow him, like, because at first, the fact that you're saying he's like a chubby kid and whatever, it makes you think like you're like a mean kid looking at him, like judging him too. But then the reversal is that you actually sympathize with him. And we're sympathizing with him. So it puts us on your side.
Right.
Way also. And you
Right.
create a scene. I really love the scenes everybody's created.
Right. And so we
The
still have.
worlds.
Yeah, we have. Thank you, Juan, so much. Outstanding. We're going to now bring Shannon, who's also a member of the Miami New Drama family. People are really stepping it up today. I'm really excited about that. She should appear now as the panelist. Let's see what. All right, here she is. Shannon, are you with us? Shannon, can you hear us?
Shannon, can you hear me?
Feels like we're playing the Ouija board. Shannon, are you there? If you're there, not twice. All right, Shannon, it's not working. We can't hear you.
Something I did want to say is, also the purpose of this exercise is thinking about what's the essence of what you want to say and digging deeper, right? If you have somebody else say it, if you have another character say it, you can remove it from yourself, therefore make it more critical if you were the one that lived the moment, whether you observed it or lived it. When I say, when you start digging deeper and when you start going vertical into these characters and when you start kind of couching the story, you're giving yourself the opportunity for the essence to manifest in different ways that are surprising. It's going to surprise you. I don't think any of you thought you were going to write these things today. And yet y'all wrote something short. You had 5 minutes. You wrote complete worlds that were concise, that each had a secret or a surprise or a really good observation that created a world, right? It's like that, it's that drop in the water, and then all the ripples that went out were very interesting and things that you could also conceivably follow. And this also works, I also think you have to consider when writing a monologue, the entry and the out point of a monologue or really any scene, anytime a character's on stage, I always like to think of it as like a rubber band that's being pulled. And they get on stage and it's pulled. And when they get off stage is when they release. But you always want to have this tension, this thing that they're saying that they have to say. We don't speak unless we have to. I mean, there's a lot of people, especially in this town, speak all the time off the top of their head. But another great piece of advice that I got from Maria Elena Fornes, who I was never lucky enough to take a class with, but the one piece of advice she gave me to me has been another like pillar in my writing was only let your characters say what they have to say, what they must say. And to me, that was very exciting because her plays are brutal and they're very truthful and there's no fluff. There's no fluff. Michelle knows this because when he asked me to cut down fake, he was like, I think I took something like 12 pages out of it. And he was like, what did you do? And I was like, I don't know. I have no idea what I did. I mean, there was a lot of repetition. There's a lot of stuff I had to get rid of, but I literally went through line by line and just cut out extra stuff. Once we got into audition, I cut out another our table read, I cut out another 2 or 3 pages, but not in sections, in lines and just pieces of, because people don't speak in complete sentences. They don't speak in these flowery thoughts. For the kind of theater I like to make, people make mistakes. They're a bit of a mess. They contradict themselves. They can be their own worst enemy. They tell the truth and they don't want to tell the truth, or they purposely cover the truth with a distraction. So, I like lean writing. Like, I don't like a play that's more than an hour and a half. I like very lean writing, unless it's like Tennessee Williams or Chekhov. But that's my approach, in and out, make your point, hit it hard, in and out, have that suspension, that's at least I think when you're doing monologue, you have the opportunity for that. And you can go through and cut out and just make it leaner and also expand when you need to expand. But if you're expanding, you better be getting to a great point. If you're expanding, there's got to be a good payoff. So just make sure that payoff is there. Is Shannon ready?
I think, well, Shannon, can you unmute yourself? I cannot unmute you. Can you unmute yourself, Shannon?
I can't hear her.
Can you hear me? Hello? Oh my God.
Shannon, are you there?
This is horrible. Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you, but there's like interface. Okay, that's better.
Shannon, we are hearing ourselves speak. I think we're having issues with you. If are you wearing headphones? That might help. Also try to unmute yourself. Jessica, can you help unmute Shannon? For some reason, it's not letting me.
Something that I haven't mentioned, this goes beyond just monologue writing. And I mentioned this a little bit with Boogie Woogie, music is very important in my writing. The rhythm of what the characters are saying are very important for characters. Some characters speak cut off and choppy. Others will have a more elegant, this is where line comes into my mind in relation to writing, the rhythm at which they speak. I'm a very musical writer.
Right.
And that can get very cheesy very quickly. So you have to be hard on yourself if you're a musical writer. But I like to create certain rhythms among the dialogue and create a certain pace to get to a certain place. But music is very important to me as I'm creating. Part of what I said about being, lean is also being simple, which is, we'll send you guys these examples, but I pulled up a couple of examples of 2 songwriters, Willie Nelson and Jerry Jeff Walker, that my father loved and I listened to all the time. And country music usually has amazing story. You can always find great stories in country music.
Sure, absolutely.
Very inspirational.
None of them end happy, but
none of them end happy. But you know what? How rare is it in life that we actually are happy? Like happiness is a destination, you're on a fool's errand, right? So none of them end happy, but there's a grace to them. that I particularly love, especially with Willie Nelson and Jerry Jeff Walker, because there's an acceptance of the horrors of life and just getting through it that I really appreciate. And there's a simplicity to the storytelling that I connect with. I like keep the story simple, stupid, you know, but that doesn't mean that the emotions can't be complex. That doesn't mean that the needs can't be complex.
And Jessica shared with us a video of Willie Nelson now with the entire panel. You can hear it afterwards. So
it's one of my favorite songs of his.
You know, if we can figure out Shannon at some point, if she'll just sort of maybe like leave, restart her computer back again, we'll let her speak whenever she's technologically ready to do so. But this is the moment in the conversation that I would really like to open for questions to Carmen. So if you have something in mind that you want to ask Carmen about a specific, you know, it could be about her process, it could be about the industry, it could be about a heck of a lot of different subjects. I'm going to start by reading Liana's comment. She said, I love your play Fake. I love how you treated the topic of Cuban art and artists. I think of you as a hope of Cuban theater in Miami, keeping such an open perspective that resonated with Cuban exile. My question is, what do you think of the future of Cuban theater is in Miami? How about the Cuban theater in Spanish? Is it too dreamy to hope that Spanish language will not get diluted and there will still be theater in Spanish? Well, I have a few things to say about that, but go ahead, Carmen, please. Well,
she asked me first.
Huh? That's
she
right.
asked me first.
She asked you first. Go for it.
We actually have a grand tradition of theater and radio and television coming from Cuba. So I don't think that will be lost. Yes, I think we're naturals. We're natural storytellers. Again, like the Irish, we're an island. We're natural with the Great Britain. We're natural storytellers. The language I appreciate. When I write about Cubans and Cuba, I try and be very honest, which is hard because our people are very self-contradicting. They're their own worst enemy. You can't push them out of their own way. We're very messy, and yet we're very fun. We can be very compassionate, very generous, and very deep. So there's a lot of material to mine there. As far as Spanish theater, I live in Shenandoah, right? So I'm close to 8th Street. So I see all those little theaters like, you know, El Barcero y Fidel, right? Like all those like crazy comedies that are just like wild, but there are lines down the street Thursday through Sunday. And every time I go to a Cuban play, it's sold out. So as far as Cuban theater, I think that it will survive, although there's a lot of really great theater coming off the island that we don't often see here. There's some really great work that's happening, and that will continue to survive. I would like to see more of a bridge between a Cuban American theater and Cuban theater, but Spanish language theater. This is something where I completely like hands down to Michelle, because I think he's creating with Miami New Drama, being truly representative of the city we live in. This plays in Spanish that I've seen in Miami New Drama, I've absolutely loved. I loved Gentociosa, that take on Chekhov. Like Chekhov's one of my favorites anyways. I could read Chekhov's laundry list, you know, to-do list and be happy. But I think he's creating wonderful theater for us and creating those opportunities for us. And as long as there are producers like Michelle, I think Spanish language theater, we're at the foundation. We can only grow from here with producers like him that are willing to invest in the community with the full recognition that the community appreciates it and loves it, because the theater that's coming from South America is amazing. We just don't see it often here. And I think Michelle's one of the people really leading the charge, at least in this city, when it comes to that. And in this country, for that matter.
Thank you very much. I want to add a couple of things. I think that there is, if you look at the last couple of years, the last 3 years or so, I think there is a resurgence in there is a generation of Cuban American writers that are really changing at least the theatrical scope of Miami. First of all, we of course have, you know, giants like Nilo Cruz, who have been working and producing work for over 20 years, and has been a great example of world-class, Cuban American writer who not only writes about Cuban themes, but he's interested in a heck of a lot of other themes, and I think that his work is just outstanding. But then you really have this generation of people that I think are extraordinary. You know, of course, you know, Carmen Pelaez being one of them that we love dearly. There's also people like Juan Sanchez that has created, you know, extraordinary plays throughout the years, but lately he's gotten the right attention with Miami Motel Stories. And he's somebody who can write about the Cuban experience and can write about 100 other things because he's extremely smart and interested in the world around him. There's people like Vanessa Garcia, who are also, you know, she has she did Amparo and Cuban Spring, and you know, she really is mainly investigating you know, her relationship with Cuba, and also is a terrific artist. So I think that it's a good moment in time for a generation. I think the three of them, I think Juan was the only one who was born in Cuba, but mainly grew up here. But it's sort of like this perspective that is finally entering the American theater because it's now the turn of that generation to tell the story.
I really like the word that you're using as far as perspective is concerned, because again, it shouldn't be all about Cuban identity.
Right.
Like my next play is really a love story set in Miami among a political campaign.
And Fake wasn't a play, you know, I mean, there are Cuban themes in Fake, but you know, because I think that as a writer, you sort of have to write yourself, but I think that the whole thing was a very new, you know, it's a play that takes place in Sotheby's or in Christie's.
Right,
and
right.
It was about that whole world of art. So
I think our Cubanity is a lens, but
right.
when we make it the destination, that will kill it. But if our Cubanity is the approach, and I think that Juan's work is particularly successful in that regard. I think that's really wonderful. The one mistake that I do think Cuban writers make, including myself, and fortunately I have people that I trust that say, no, you're being too cute, stop it, is that we get precious, and we have to really be hard on ourselves and really be rigorous with our word and the words that we're putting down and the ideas that we're putting down. Because whenever you get a little in fashion, you start to live up to a certain ideal that people are looking for.
Right.
And we should, especially being Cuban, I think we always have to, if we're writing anything about Cuba or Cubans, so we always have to be very hard on ourselves and very rigorous. Otherwise, we'll lose the argument. I had to do that with Rum Coke. I had to be very hard on the characters. And in Fake
right.
too, I was very hard on all the characters, because otherwise you're weakening your argument if you don't pummel your characters. You're weakening your argument.
Right. Well, I also want to give just find out the question about theater in Spanish, which I think that, you know, there's a lot of boulevard, you know, very broad boulevard theater in Spanish. Generally, it's not a Cuban thing; it's a Venezuelan, you know, and I think that will exist. And I think that in a way, it's very easy for us to like point at it and say like, that's really bad art, like, you know, that's terrible, because, you know, it is, but
But it makes people
draws
laugh.
an
People
audience. It draws an audience, and how many theater companies would not die to have that audience? And you know, what has been our experience is that if you take those themes and you do it in a more thought out, you know, artistic approach, that same audience will come in even on bigger numbers. You know, I think it just speaks to the fact that there are people, smart, educated people who English was not their first language, who have a hard time, you know, seeing plays in English, and they, you know, they really respond to when you, and this is a bilingual city, a trilingual city, Creole being the third language, Haitian Creole. So I think that it's only on Miami New Drama, this is the first time we are actually starting our MasterMiND classes in Spanish next week as well. So we're going to have 2 days in English and 2 days in Spanish. We believe in the bilingual nature of our community. And so we have a couple more questions.
Yes.
You know, we have we have Marcela saying, thank you for the class. My question is, do you think idiosyncrasy affects the way an audience perceive a story, or as long as something is personal enough, anyone can relate to it?
I think if the idiosyncrasy is truthful, even if the audience can't relate to it, they will connect to the truth of it, right? So I think that what does it matter to your story? Does the idiosyncrasy add another layer to your story? If it doesn't add a layer to your story and you're doing it just to show off, cut it. But I think, generally speaking, I think the more specific you make something, the more an audience can relate to even a world that they do not know.
And
I
that
had people tell me from Africa, China, Northeastern Jewish, American. I mean, you literally named the nationality and they told me, that's my grandmother when I did Rum and Coke. That's my abuela.
right.
You know? So to me, it was interesting that people related, because what they were relating to was the generational aspect of it, the generational relationship. So I made my grandmother very specific, and I made her point clearly. You know, her sentimentality was clear. Her reason was clear. So I think the more specific you get, the more universal you get.
Right, and which was a theme that Winter Miller was talking about 2 days ago. The idea
Right.
that you be very specific. The more specific you are, you know, the better for
Create that
the
world.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so we have Shannon said her monologue, and we're going to get to it in a second. Carmen, you're going to read it. Meanwhile, we're going to go to a couple of questions. So Crystal said also, how many drafts until you bring a second set of eyes to read, hear your new work? Oh, and she had a question before that I didn't see. Do you listen to music as you write? I just completed a full-length OPS. One person.
Opus?
No, OPS. What's that? I don't
Yes.
know.
One person show?
One person show. There you go. One person show. That's an acronym that I'm now going to familiarize myself with this week, and listen to the same 45 minutes of music on loop. And I wonder if that makes you fall into a trap of too much rhythm, and if it's us.
I would say,
Us.
what do you call it? You have to read your work out loud. I benefit a lot from reading my work out loud. I do a draft and then I read it out loud. And because I'm an actor also, I know when it's BS and I know what I have to cut. I know if it works or not. But I think read your draft out loud. And if you're finding yourself when you're reading out loud falling into a pattern that doesn't serve the story, then maybe put on a different soundtrack when you do your rewrite. But if it's a pattern that works to build something in the story, then you've worked it. I have for the play I'm writing now, I have a playlist. It's all my favorite love songs, and it's all the songs that make me go, right? So I have that playlist, and I tend to play it as I'm writing, and just certain moods. I play it different songs for different scenes.
And how many drafts until you bring a second set of eyes to hear your work?
That's harder to tell. I have people that I really trust, specifically because they are so hard on me. So usually the people that I really trust, I'm not afraid to show them the first draft that I feel good with, right? If I'm having a problem, if I have a knot and I don't know how to work myself out of that knot, I might send the scene to a director I work with a lot, Carl Andrus, who I love, or I'll shoot the scene to my sister, or I'll read the scene out loud to my sister, who's a very good judge. And I'll say, does this work? And then even as I'm reading it out loud, I can hear if it works or not. But you just can't be afraid. Like, I remember I was young and Edward Albee was talking one time, and I just wanted to talk to Edward Albee. So I came up with a silly question of like, what do you do when you're afraid to write? And he just looked at me like I was a dummy. And he's like, if you're afraid to write, don't. Right? And I was like, checkmate. Like, don't be afraid. It's not brain surgery. Nobody's going to live or die on it. When you feel like you're ready, share that draft. For you, that might be a fourth draft, or it might be a first draft. What I would say is this: don't waste your reader's eyes. A lot of us want a pat on the back. Writing is very lonely. Don't waste your reader's eyes. Don't ask somebody, you know, when I read somebody's play, it'll take me 3 or 4 hours because I will take notes. I'll revisit it. I want to make sure that I'm giving really good feedback. I'm giving them really good questions. And that's a big chunk of my day. So don't waste your reader's eyes, because if they read the same scene again and you've only changed like 3 sentences, you're not going to get good feedback either. And then they're not going to appreciate your work in the same way. So when you're ready, pick a reader. And then for your next draft, pick a different reader that you trust. But I think, you have to trust yourself a little bit. You have to lean in a little bit to your own confidence in why you're writing this story. So you'll know when you're ready. It's different for everybody. Short answer.
All right. So, so Dante is saying some piece of advice I was giving to start writing includes write about your life and write about everyday events. But what if you don't have many experiences worth writing about, or can't turn things into a story? You know, example, so what you went to get groceries, it's a big deal.
I would say write it, if you don't have things in your own life that you can write about, I would say write about what moves you. Write about what moves you. What is, like, you may not have something to write about, but you might be inspired by an act of kindness. So write about how did that act of kindness land with you, and write about that. Find a painting.
Right.
Write about that painting.
But in a way, I mean, in a way, everybody has spent some time on Earth have falling in love, been heartbroken, was stricken with grief, experienced extreme happiness, experienced betrayed, experienced longing. And so those are really the colors to tell a story. So although, you might not have, gone to Nepal and climbed a mountain and discovered a mystery, I think that your inner colors are there, to inform you. And maybe you're lucky enough not to have enough grief, but you are, clumsy in love enough to have a lot of heartbroken. So you use the ingredients that you feel more.
Yeah, and I would also say, there's a couple of, I think there's 2 kinds of writers, right? I'm in the one that I get something stuck in my craw and I'm going to answer that question. And even if I don't answer the question, I'm going to make the case for it. I'm going to make the case for the thing that moved me, right? And I think, like, that's very Pedro Almodovar. Like, he'll be inspired by a news story, and you can see 80s Spain and early 90s Spain, Franco's Spain, in his stories, right? Woody Allen is like that too. I'm sorry about to bring him up for those of you that it might trigger, but Woody Allen is a person that is very much inspired by New York and his childhood, and you see him revisit that over and over and over in his work. But there are other people. I mean, Winter's a perfect example. She's a journalist. She was working as a journalist, and she was inspired by this story that had absolutely nothing to do with her, but she decided to investigate it. So there are people that work from the inside out, and there's people that work from the outside in. And it's just mastery of the technique. You want to be thorough, and you always are going to put yourself in there, but you just have to be rigorous, and you have to be thorough with the story that you're telling, whether it's inspired by something that happened to you or not. You want to relate to it. I know something's working when I make myself laugh or when I make myself cry. I know it's working. But not everybody's like that, and that's cool too, as long as you can tell a story that leaves an audience with a different look at a world. It's okay. It doesn't matter how you got there, as long as you got there.
That's right. So we have a couple of other questions, and then I want to go make sure that we have time to do Shannon's monologue. Do you consider a monologue a play? Personally, I think monologues like Year of Magical Thinking as plays, but others seem to think you need to have two or more actor characters for it to be a play. Well, I mean, you wrote a whole play, which is a one-person show. So I assume you do, you believe that monologues are plays?
The only
Or one-person shows are
so
plays?
full disclosure, I don't like solo shows, generally speaking, except like the solo show Full Gallop, which is about Deanna Vreeland's life. I saw, I think, 4 or 5 times. Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which is basically a solo show with a rock band. I ushered to see that show in New York at the Jane Street Theater 6 or 7 times. So I think a solo show is a play, whether it's a monologue or several different characters, if there's a story there, if there's a beginning, middle, and end outside of the characters or outside of the monologue. What I don't like about solo plays is, unfortunately, too many people use them as like, look at what I can do, look at how I can stretch. And it's, again, when it's about you, you failed. You're the starting point, sure, but it's got to be about something bigger.
Right. Whether
it's one character, one monologue, or one person, 17 monologues. I think if the story has a beginning, middle, and end, and it reaches for something bigger, it's a play. Right. And some plays, by the way, fail at that too. So It's just, to me, it's the idea that you have 2 or 3 people and then suddenly it's a play, not necessarily.
Yeah.
To me, is there a story that transcends? That's what's most important to me.
Well, that's the key. Are you telling a story? Are you telling and listen, I mean, Doug Wright wrote I Am My Own Wife, which is, I think, one of the best plays of
never seen it, but I love that writer.
The last decade, and Moises Kaufman directed it. It was absolutely beautiful. I mean, absolutely, one-person shows, I think, are 100% plays. We've actually, I think we haven't done any at Miami Drama.
Oh, brilliant. In Spanish.
Oh, yeah, everybody, that's right. Pura Cosa Maravillosa with Erika La Vega. We did that. And that
lovely.
Was
it was great.
That was extraordinary. When you're trying to write from your own experience, how do you stop yourself from always trying to make your work perfect? It's difficult for me to write and allow it to be messy.
I am perfect. So no, actually, it's the complete admission of what a mess I am and what a mess people are. And frankly, perfection is boring. Like if I see somebody with the perfect life, with the perfect teeth and the perfect hair and the perfect husband and the perfect kids and the perfect car and the perfect house, I run in the other direction. It's not like to me, challenge is interesting, right? And our frailties are interesting. Our frailties are what connect us to one another. Otherwise, we're robots. Robots are perfect. To me, it's our frailties are those moments of grace that I tell you that I'm always looking for. So, especially if you're writing about yourself, especially if you're writing a character based on yourself, like I write for myself to act because otherwise I would get cast in crap. I don't want to play the nurse in Romeo and Juliet forever. I want to play Lady Macbeth. So they're not going to cast me as Lady Macbeth because I'm not thin and beautiful, but I can play the hell out of a Lady Macbeth. So I'll write my own Lady Macbeth in my version of it, right? So I think that especially if you're writing for yourself, or especially if you're writing inside, based on yourself, enjoy getting messy. Right. Enjoy just bearing your soul. Enjoy being naked. Nobody knows it's the truth. A lot of times people think that the things that are based on my personal life experience are based on me for real, and they're totally not. And the things that are based on me for real that are incredibly embarrassing, people think I've made up. Don't be afraid to be embarrassed. You don't owe anybody the truth of your experience as far as like admitting, oh yeah, that happened to me, but you do owe them the truth of the story, right? And nobody's perfect. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Thank God, because otherwise we'd have nothing to write about. There's real beauty in the break. There's real beauty in the struggle. Nobody, if you look at a room of 50 people and one of them's on the floor, who do you think you're going to look at? You're going to look at the person on the floor. Be on the floor. It's right. Okay.
So we have another. So is there a film version of Rum Coke, and can we see it online?
I do have it shot. We'll
think of it. So it exists, and we'll think about if it's worth sharing online.
I can't share it online because of the music rights. The music rights right now are at about $100,000. So I would need to find it. The show, it cost me about $15,000 to shoot the show, and it's about $100,000 in music rights. But because each character has a piece of music that's very tied to them, and it's important for that time in exile, I have to either fundraise the money to get it released on like a iTunes platform, but I am still talking with distribution. We've been talking for 3 or 4 years. These things take very long. I can do it in schools for donation. So I might set up a screening of it and people can give what they want if they please. If I do, I'll put it out through my media.
We'll let people know. Great, and we'll do it through Miami U Drama.
I'm proud of the filming of it, though. It's very good. The director of photography did a great job in capturing the experience of the piece. So I hope to put it out soon.
So Liana is saying, could you comment on adapting a novel for theater? What are the characteristics that novels need to be a candidate for theater? I have some thoughts of that, but if you want.
I would say if it has a lot of action, what are the active components of the novel, to me, is what I would look at. I'm trying to adapt actually something for film that I've looked at, but theater, I haven't done a novel for theater, so I'm not really the one to answer that. My first assumption would be, what are the action points? What are the culmination points, and how do I get to them the most effortlessly, seamlessly? How can I tie the story to condense it to make it just what needs to be seen on stage? But what do you think, Michelle?
Well, I think that the novels that are written in first person lend itself easier to theater because it already starts with a character, a voice, and the fact that they're telling you that story as a reader is that they have something to say and they wanted to say it to someone. So immediately that checks off, I think, a few important boxes of why a play needs to happen. I don't think that it's necessary. All you can make great adaptations of novels written in third person, but I think that the first person absolutely helps. And then I think the other advice I would say is that use the plot points as your starting point, but this is not think of it as a work inspired based by a novel and not an adaptation of. So you can really free yourself because it's important when you're writing to have an artistic exploration that you're going to find something. If all the questions are already answered, you're not going to have a lot of way to go. But if you are, if you're doing an adaptation of something and allow yourself for the discovery, I think it's better. So, Carmen, would you read, please, in the chat, Shannon's monologue?
The ice skating rink? That one? Okay.
Yes.
The ice skating rink was tragic. He was there, and I didn't think he would be, even though I had secretly hoped he would be, and everyone knew everything, and it was just weird and terrible. I was in my room texting Brianna, sending her paragraph after paragraph, pouring out my bleeding heart about this insignificant, horrible human when my mom comes in. And she demands that I show her my phone. I try and hide it and refuse, but she rips it from my hands and sits on the bed reading everything. She starts to laugh, not sure if it went through, but here it is. Okay. I gave you the instruction. It went through, Shannon.
Great. Okay, Shannon, that was wonderful. It was, you could see, it was very visually, to see, Carmen, what do you think?
I loved it. I think visually it was there. I would include maybe something that she actually had written in the paragraph. Like, instead of pouring out my bleeding heart, I would have added like something that she said.
Or a picture that she sent, or something that is... So something that we know that there is a big stake. You said something of big stake. You shared something. that it's now in the world. So anyway, but I think it's outstanding.
I like also she demands that I share my phone. I refuse. These are strong words that I think really work. And I think we all know that, just like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed.
Great.
Like, so that was also very relatable. I just love that I gave these like random few instructions: take this, leave this, use what you want. And we come up with all these different worlds.
Right.
And these active worlds, and these worlds that we can all relate to. We've all been in that situation, which I thought was really great.
Right. Well, listen, this has been an extraordinary couple hours. Do you have any closing thoughts, Carmen, before we do farewell to?
We're ending early. Oh my God.
Well, we have a few minutes, but let's start the process of ending. Like a proper play.
Okay, so I'm going to look at some notes. Going to structure, get the story right, and everything falls into place. I picked up that nugget from Itamar Moses, a wonderful playwright and writer for television. He's right. When you get the story in place, sometimes characters have to meet the story, which is surprising. Billy Wilder once said, because I do work in film also, so I always I do plays and screenwriting. I thought this was valuable. Billy Wilder once said, if you see a man coming through a doorway, it means nothing. If you see him coming through a window, it's at once interesting. And I thought that was amazing, because Billy Wilder, first of all, was able to move through genre very easily.
Oh my God.
Brilliantly.
It's a genius. A genius,
right? So I think the way that he was able to set things up was really brilliant. And when you are writing, like with this play that I'm writing now, like I was totally stuck, and I have this character that just says wild things. I never know what's going to come out of Gilberto's mouth, but it always makes me laugh. So I think that when you find yourself, like when you've written yourself into a corner, bring in a surprise element, give yourself a reversal just as an exercise. Have a character pop in that you weren't expecting to pop in, have him come back in, or have him come in for the first time, or her come in for the first time. I would say don't be precious with anything. And Michelle knows this because we fought about the monologues in Fake. If I think something works, I will not let it go. The percentage of things that I think work and refuse to let go over like 2% out of 100%. There's a lot of stuff that I'm like, all right, go ahead. You have to trust in your own abundance. You have to trust that you can keep writing, and that you can keep coming to a solution. Even when you don't feel like writing, you have to keep writing, even if it's terrible, even if you're going to throw away those 12 pages. Those 12 pages are loosening your hand. They're getting you closer to where you need to be, but you can't be afraid to throw away stuff. When I get stuck with plot, which is something that I'm getting better at thanks to Fake, I try, and we all have a great idea. We start writing, we're 15 pages in, and then we think, oh my God, I'm a fraud. Why am I doing this? What I like to do is list. I list out the story of where I see it going. So I'm a big fan of lists. I'm also a big fan of, and I think Parasite does this brilliantly. In the movie Parasite, if you haven't seen it, you should. Every character's perspective is very valid. Like, it's a story where everybody truly is the hero of their own story, which makes the conflicts, you invest that much more in the conflicts. When we sat down for Fake at the first table reading, I said to everybody, each individual actor, you're the hero of the story. You're the hero of the story. You're right. So everybody immediately knew that this was going to be a boxing match, that everybody was right. And everybody was defending their turf, rightfully so. So I would say, make sure that you give every character their dignity, especially the ones you don't like, and especially the ones that you think are wrong. Give them the right fight for them. Give them the right thing to want for them, and their right moment of catharsis. I don't think people change that much, so I'm not a big fan of, like, at the end of plays where people are like, and now I'm a different person, right? I think it's okay for people to be shitty, and it's okay for people not to do the right thing. And it's oftentimes more interesting because it's how we deal with it. So,
I mean, you think, hold on a second. You think that somebody at the end of the show, the lead or something, does not need to be a changed person. Is that what you're saying?
They can or they can't be.
Right. But at least in a way to be a story, something needs to change.
Absolutely something needs to change. But what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be a win. It can be a loss.
Right. It doesn't have to be changed for the better. Is that what you mean?
Right. If it worked for the story to change it for the better, look, my entire life, my wins come with losses. So that's what I'm used to. That's always going to be what my perspective is. I don't know about happy endings. I know about complicated ones though.
Right.
So that's, now if you're a person that you really love the happy ending, that works for you, awesome. Play it up. But the fight before the happy ending, I want teeth knocked out. You know, like the struggle to get that happy ending, I want it to be on the edge of my seat. I don't know where it's going. That's kind of like what I'm attracted to in theater. And I guess don't be afraid would be the last thing I would say. Like, you know, again, it's not brain surgery. There are so many greater problems in the world. Be generous with yourself. Be generous with the people around you. Assume the audience is smarter than you. You don't have to explain that much to them. Get down to the action. One trick I would say is write out a scene and then write it out without dialogue. Just the actions of it. And then see what you can cut if you're overwriting.
Right.
You know, that's a trick that I like, but I think that's it of what I was going to present that I can think of.
And listen, and Carmen, if you want to share afterwards an email with some reference to folks, and Jessica might be able to put that together. I think that's a good idea of the themes that you talk about today, of things that have inspired you. I can't thank you enough, Carmen, for today. I hope that this is not the last. We'll have you here at the MasterMiND. But in fact, that as we continue to do more courses, we are able to zero in more specifically on themes and have you guide a session. I want to briefly, before we finish, just talk about what's ahead of the MasterMiND program. We have this Friday at 3 p.m. We have Lana Gordon. Lana is an extraordinary actor from, lives in New York now, worked professionally abroad for 12 years or so in Germany, then came back to New York and, you know, was the star of Chicago on Broadway. And we're lucky enough to have her as one of the leads of A Wonderful World, the show currently in hibernation at the Colony Theater. And she's going to sort of like guide us through her journey. We also have, starting next week, and this is exciting because we are getting more specific in our workshop. We're getting more, you know, more to the point of certain themes that we want to explore more in detail. We have a wonderful workshop for 2 sessions with a limit of 15 people per session with Tatiana Pandiani. And it's about a little bit about what Carmen, what we work with Carmen today about self-scripting. You know, don't wait, make your own work. And this is also focused on actors to give you tools so that you can continue with that. You find more information about that in the blog of Miami Drama at colony.org at our homepage. And I hope that is something actually that we can return with Carmen and then, you know, do another session with Carmen, maybe a smaller group of participants and more hands-on experience. This was wonderful. I want to say how great the people who read were outstanding. And always, Carmen, just a joy to talk to you, to see your passion. I always feel that, you know, that when you speak, you make me feel very small, which is extremely rare because you're such a magnetic personality and you have so much passion. you out-passion me. So that's
Impossible, Michelle, impossible.
Thank
Listen,
you, everyone.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Last thing I want to say is if you like this, if you are all motivated by this, sure, donations are nice at colony.org. But more than that, you know, what could really make a difference for us is just give us a review, whether it's a TripAdvisor or on our Facebook page, both the Colony Theater or Miami New Drama. You know, reviews come a long way for us, especially, you know, TripAdvisor ones, Facebook, Yelp, etc. That'll be a nice gesture for us. You know, these courses are and will continue to be free. Again, thank you so much. And thank you very much, Carmen.
My absolute pleasure.
Celebrating Passover tonight, have a socially distanced Seder, and then Easter is this Sunday. Yes, Carmen.
I'm having a Passover dinner on Easter, actually, by Zoom. Some friends just invited me.
Well, there you go. This is nothing like a good apocalyptic crisis to remind us that we are just the human race, and that's it. All right.
Together.
Thank you so much, Carmen. We'll see you guys very soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.